the center of the action of our research and development organization, which is the lifeblood of a company like Johnson & Johnson. So here we have about 2,500 scientists and researchers that are connected with the rest of our R&D organization.
Joaquin Duato is chairman and CEO of Johnson & Johnson, one of the largest drug makers in the world. We met with him at his firm's research center in Springhouse, New Jersey, to learn how a major pharmaceutical company develops cutting-edge drugs.
It started with a smaller campus, and gradually we have expanded it, as you can see, into a large campus in a very beautiful location too.
For Duato, there has never been a better time to be in the business of health science innovation.
We are in a golden era of life science innovation, of medical innovation. And that's the convergence of two forces. On one side, we have a better understanding of the biology of diseases, of the underpinnings of disease. And on the other hand, we have technology, AI, machine learning, that gives us the opportunity to manage large amounts of data and gain insights for that. So all these factors combined create the type of progress that we see. And the US is the country that today has a lead over the rest of the world in life science innovation.
It is no coincidence that the U.S. leads the world in biotech innovation. In 2021, a Congressional Budget Office study reported that the industry was investing over $80 billion a year, up by a factor of 10 over 10 years, amounting to some 25% of pharma companies' revenues, a much larger portion than for other industries. It's not just the money being spent in the United States. It's also the way the government, academia, and the private sector have worked together.
You don't have places which are hubs of life science innovation like Boston or San Francisco, anywhere else in the world. Everybody is looking with envy to the type of ecosystem that we have in the US. Great invested in basic research through academic institutions and hospitals, venture capital that flows into the life science sector, great companies that are able to develop those technologies, manufacture them and bring them to patients, protection of intellectual property, a market that rewards innovation. That combination, it's a uniquely American combination.
Individual companies like J&J have also created their own complex structures to seek out innovation wherever it is and develop it.
We work very hard in order to work and scout the world to see when and where are innovations and technologies that are promising that could eventually benefiting of our scale in research, in development, in manufacturing, and in commercialization. And that's how we have been able to encounter, to find significant innovations that were at an emerging state, still far from getting into patients, and ultimately get them into patients.
An example is icotrokinra, an oral medicine Johnson & Johnson is developing to treat the skin disease plaque psoriasis.
So what are autoimmune diseases? Diseases in which your own immune system turns against you. Having an oral therapy was going to expand the pool of patients that were going to be able to treat it with this medication. So we work and we scout the world to see, are there any company out there that is going to have an oral medication with comparable safety and efficacy to these injectable biologics? And we identified one company. And they had a molecule that still was preclinical, meaning it had not been yet used in patients. So we brought it here to Springhouse. And in Springhouse, we work in making sure that the drug was stable in the digestive tract, that it had the right potency, and we actually built a medicine that is an oral medicine with similar efficacy to biologics that went to the clinic. We had the clinical trials, very successful, showing this comparable efficacy, and pretty soon, in the second half of the year, we're going to be able to file it for the FDA in psoriasis and get to patients next year.
How big could this be?
This is going to be one of our biggest breakthroughs for Johnson & Johnson and for our growth in the second half of the decade.
Big pharmaceutical companies like Johnson & Johnson are spending record amounts of money to discover and develop new medicines. It has invested some $50 billion in R&D and M&A since the beginning of last year. But they're far from the only ones. Zara Moradali represents venture capital firms in biotech as head of Grant Thornton's Life Sciences Industry Practice.
So when you think about big pharma and you look at data from 2015 through 2021, the drugs that were developed internally and FDA approved was less than 30% by Big Pharma, and the rest of it was external. For some companies, that percentage was 80%, and for others, it was 0.
In looking for those opportunities to invest in the innovative culture found in the labs, Muradali looks for 3 things: the people, the science, and patience.
When you think about science, it's challenging. It's hard, and you know, when you think about the failures in R&D, I mean, that's to be expected. And any investor should be patient, and they should have a time horizon of like 10 to 15 years to see a drug from discovery to commercialization. It's not easy. Science is difficult.
Duato respects how difficult the discipline is, regardless of size or scale. And of course, we can't talk about innovation in just about any part of the economy without turning to artificial intelligence and what it will mean for scientific discovery. We saw it firsthand at J&J as they used it to screen millions of compounds.
How long does it take you to screen the whole 1.7 million?
We can screen one compound every 2 to 3 seconds. So we can screen this whole entire 1.7 million compounds in roughly 5 to 10 days, depending on the target.
Wow.
So
you could shoot 1.7 million compounds in 5 to 10 days.
10 days.
Does this go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Yes, it can. Yeah.
So what used to take us months now take us days, no?
Yes.
So this is a way of accelerating the number of compounds and also the time it takes us to have lead compounds. And then we have other platforms that assess to what extent they are going to be viable. Are they going to have any toxicities? What is the biological effect?
But what form does the output of this have? I mean, is it data?
It's the data.
Is it data?
So in the past, analyzing all these millions of data points would have been very difficult for researchers.
Yes.
Now they have the underlying models that are going to drive the insights for them. So we accelerate the screening and also the analytical part. So the AI is a tool.
Yeah.
The data is proprietary, and then also the interpretation of the insights coming from the AI, it's what our scientists and researchers do. So while, yes, technology is important, ultimately it comes down to our data and to our researchers to what extent we can accelerate progress.
Handling all the data is a big opportunity, but also a big challenge, particularly for early-stage biotech firms, leading some to partner up.
Does that, all things being equal over time, give Big Pharma something of an edge because it typically has access to more data?
I mean, it might be, and that is where we're seeing collaboration agreements with companies that are AI-first companies with Big Pharma, and you're seeing activities in that space as well. You've got this right. I mean, that's where the flow of money in the future will be.
And then there's the role of the government in giving incentives for biotech innovation and in creating the overall environment where it can thrive. Tim Sullivan is CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority.
It's a crowded field, but New Jersey, I think, stands toward the top of that field, largely because of the investments that Governor Murphy has made in growing that innovation ecosystem. So we have an R&D tax credit, for example, that all the big pharma companies take advantage of. We have really focused on trying to grow, again, that early stage pipeline of companies that might get acquired by big pharma or turn into big pharma companies themselves. So, for example, Gilead made New Jersey its East Coast headquarters 3 or 4 years ago because they bought a company in Morris County and liked the talent so much that in New Jersey that they decided to plant their East Coast flag here. So, for example, we have a program. We think it's the only program like this in the country that lets early stage life sciences and technology companies sell or monetize their net operating losses and sell them to profitable companies in exchange for non-dilutive, essentially equity, which a number of companies that have grown and scaled have taken advantage of.
This may be the golden era of medical innovation, as Joaquin Duato believes. But when you ask about the origin of all those wonder drugs, there's no single answer. They come from a unique combination of private enterprise, big and small, capital from a range of sources, the research being pursued by gifted scientists, and the support of federal and state governments. But the results of that network have only one real destination for all their work: the patients they serve.
One thing that I'm going to leave the group here is all about the patient. Science is hard. Have the patience, and let's support the community and innovation to get it to where we need it to be.
We measure success in terms of how many patients we can serve. If we are able to address significant patient needs, as we are doing, then we can certainly translate that into an economic return. This is part of the principles of our credo. We are a company with 140 years of history. Our founders established what we call our credo 85 years ago, creating a very clear hierarchy of decision making. First we serve the patients, then the employees, then the communities, and if we do well for those stakeholders, then you're going to have a fair return for your shareholders.